نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My dear respected brothers, sisters and honorable elders, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ability to come here and gather here and to listen to this talk where the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be taking place and where we will be remembering death. And he said that in a gathering where the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes place, the angels gather there. And when the angels gather there, so many of them gather, they pile on top of each other. And when they pile on top of each other, they reach the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they reach there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is all-knowing, but He asks them, where have you come from and why do you reach here? And they say, we come from so-and-so place, Newcastle University. And they'll say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask them, what are the people doing? And they will reply, they are remembering you, O Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask them, what do they want from me? And the angels will reply, they want your forgiveness. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, they are forgiven. So, alhamdulillah, bearing this in mind, inshallah, I'd like to move on to the talk itself. So, alhamdulillah, we came up with this funeral rites in Islam, practical demonstration. Now, many of us might have experienced the practical aspect, but on a second-hand experience, not first-hand. And when it happens first-hand, it's often quite difficult. Often a person is usually in emotional trauma. They don't know what to do. If somebody just, a close loved one passes away in front of them, they often don't know what to do. They often pause and think, who should I call? Should I call the funeral director? Should I call the doctor? Should I call the masjid? What should I do? So, as well as who to call and calling their legal preparations, as well, especially living in this country, it can be difficult, do you get a death certificate, a burial certificate? The doctor needs to come and sign and make sure, to confirm the death. And also the ghusl itself, the shrouding, the burial process. A lot of us, in that rush and in that emotion, we often make a lot of mistakes. And, it's seen in many places where people often make a lot of mistakes just because they're in that emotional state. So just to cover these points and just to give a perspective of the correct way of doing it, inshallah. That's why we organize this. One of the main reasons that we organize this talk. Just with you, there should be some pieces of paper. These pieces of paper I think one of them got the itinerary on it and space for questions. Also, if you would like to join this link, and there's a Google form so you can post your questions on the anonymous there. Priority will be given to the written questions though. Inshallah, we also if you want to make any notes as well, you can do so. And at the end, you just be checked and asked if you got any for the doctor or for Nasa as well. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first guest. MashaAllah, he endeavored on his studies about 5 or 6 years ago, and alhamdulillah graduated from this very university last year. And as well as his contribution to the university, he's helped in the community and endlessly in the hospitals, helped in the community. And now he's in his foundation year of study after his graduation. And a lot of you might not know. You might know about that, but what you might not know is that he was a pivotal member of the ISA committee. I think the committee indeed will agree that he was one of the best treasurers that the committee has ever had, that the ISA has ever had. So, alhamdulillah, we do miss him greatly from the committee, but alhamdulillah he's with us today. And so without further ado, I'd like to pass on to him, inshallah. So if you could give a doctor's perspective, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So my section at the beginning, what I'd like to do is essentially go over some of the legal aspects of the deceased. After they die, what happens next, what paperwork is involved, what steps the family has to take, and other responsible officials. So we'll go into that. Also medical aspects surrounding death, its verification, different classifications of death. And then we'll touch on a different subject which isn't directly related to the talk, but organ donation and Islamic and moral, religious differences and also certain controversial subjects as well in that section of the talk. So we'll begin with the verifying of the death. It's very straightforward. The steps are involved doing a pain stimulus, checking that the pupils are not responding to light, fixed and dilated, and listening for a total of 5 minutes to the heart and the lungs, and there should be no heart sounds and no breath sounds. So this is very straightforward procedure, and the death can be verified that way. And what happens after that depends on the circumstances of the death. Whether it's in the community or whether it's in a hospital, and further whether it was an unexpected death or expected. And without going too much into the detail of this flow diagram, what would happen first of all is a doctor would have to see the patient and issue what's called MCCD, Medical Certificate for Cause of Death. This obviously is the doctor giving a reason for why the patient died, and the only circumstances which they can do that is if they've seen the patient within 14 days of the death. So can everyone hear me okay, or shall I move it closer or further? A bit further. Is that okay there? Okay, sorry about that. So the doctor has to have seen the patient 14 days prior to the death, and they have to be able to give a clear cause for why the patient died. And once they've done that, the certificate of death can be issued, the MCCD. The coroner has a role for when, we'll discuss the role of the coroner and who the coroner is in a second. The registrar takes that MCCD and issues the green form, which allows the family to proceed with burial proceedings and officially register the death. And the funeral director is coordinates the funeral. So the coroner is either a lawyer or a doctor who's an official whose job is to make sure that deaths have a cause. The doctor, if they can't find the cause of death, or if they haven't seen the patient 14 days prior to the death, they have to refer this to the coroner, and the coroner has to do his own initial investigation. And if they determine that there isn't a cause, they will then, by law, have to do more investigation. So these are all the reasons listed for why the doctor might have to refer it to the coroner. If it's a sudden death, if it's 24 hours of being admitted to the hospital, if the death is considered suspicious, unnatural or violent, through neglect or through, for example, employment, and even if this is historical employment, exposure to asbestos, things like that. Or if it was after an operation or through anesthetic. So all of these reasons may prompt the coroner to do more investigation. If the coroner decides the cause is clear, then the certificate can be issued and there's no post-mortem, and the death can be registered with the registrar and the funeral proceedings can go ahead. But if the coroner decides there hasn't been a cause which has been found, they may decide to do a post-mortem, and once they decide to do a post-mortem, this is their right by law. And that means essentially taking the body of the deceased and examining it, including dissecting the body to determine what was the cause. And if it's still unknown, then an inquest can be started, and this is a court, essentially a court hearing with all circumstances fully investigated. These are the different forms which I've just talked about. So for us, essentially, the thing to note would be in circumstances where a patient is dying in the community, it would be essential really to get a GP to let them know, make them aware, and so they can come out to see the body, because if they haven't seen the patient within 14 days of the death, then the certificate won't be issued and things will be delayed after that. So it's essential to get that in place early, so there's no delays. We also have to know what our role is as Muslims with the dying patient and what our job is, and Maulana Abdullah will go more into that. The handling of the body is very important because, the body after 2-3 hours, it becomes, stiff. The muscles contract and they do not relax after that. This is rigor mortis, 2-3 hours after the death. So you have to position the body, lie the arms out flat, lie the legs out flat, close the eyes, close the jaw, and essentially make sure that the body will then be presentable at the funeral. To inform the coroner of faith requirements, if the case has been referred to the coroner, they're aware that we're Muslims and there's a pressure of time to get the burial in a timely manner. So they'll try to expedite their investigations, and they do take that into account, faith requirements. If the post-mortem is required, if the coroner is aware that this is a Muslim patient, then they will try to avoid the post-mortem, and there are different means now available. MRI scanning of the dead body might prove the cause might be obvious on the scan, and that avoids the post-mortem, which is very important for Muslims. To cooperate with legal requirements. So if the post-mortem has been ordered, this is a legal judgment. There's nothing you can do to dispute that or to protest. The cause of death must be found, and so we should cooperate with the legal requirements. The next of kin have to take the MCCD to register the death within 5 years. So just moving on the topic a little bit, we've talked about the cardiac cause of, verifying the death, which is a cardiopulmonary verification. So the heart is not beating for a minimum of 5 minutes. But by law, another type of death is also recognized, which is brain death. And in this situation, usually if you imagine a trauma patient, for example, car accident, there's been a blow to the head, the brain has been severely damaged and is not functioning any longer, but the person is still, you could say, alive, given that their heart is still beating. In this situation, there are criteria for verifying that the brain has expired and that this, by law, is now considered death. And we'll go into those criteria, but as you can see, the lungs and the heart can continue beating in this situation. That's the important thing to know. And even if they are beating due to invasive ventilation, i.e. a ventilator machine, the tube is going down the lungs and the machine is breathing for the patient, this still has to be considered a brain death, even if that's ongoing. There are cases where there are things to rule out, for example, an overdose, which may mimic this finding, or hypothermia, severe hypothermia. This is not the same as a coma or vegetative state where the brain is still functioning and there is still elements of consciousness. The tests you can read here, so they're basically testing for brain reflexes and signs of consciousness. And if a patient has any brain function preserved, then these tests will have a positive finding. One of the tests, as you can read, is that they're disconnected from the ventilator, which is doing the breathing for the patient momentarily. And if there's clear sign that the patient can't sustain their breathing on their own, then that is more evidence to indicate a brainstem death. It's part of the criteria for brainstem death. To conduct these tests, in the UK, there will be 2 doctors who both have to agree on the findings, and the tests are usually repeated twice. If all of these tests yield no response from the patient, then brain death can be diagnosed. And this is including if the patient is moving with their limbs or their torso. They may have spinal reflexes, but that does not mean that the movements are due to brain activity. And they will not change the diagnosis of brain death. So according to law, this is a legal death, the heart, even though the heart is still beating. But how do Muslim scholars look at this situation? And you can see some of the fatwa going back from 1981, and you can see the disagreement there. Some have opined that the death is a legal death as per UK law. However, others have declared this unstable life. It's not death, it's a type of unstable life. And the disagreement is pertinent with regard to organ donation, which we'll get to. So these are the perspectives, and it's an extremely difficult philosophical and moral question, because to what degree can we say that the experts can determine this vis-a-vis other considerations, for example, philosophical or religious? In the past, Muslim scholars did have their criteria for death, and usually would revolve around no breath, no breathing, no work of breathing, and they mention other signs, for example, the nose and the forehead and the changing of the features. So the expert do have a role in this, but to what extent? It's a difficult question. The reversibility. So we know that, for example, after brain death, there can be, given the right circumstances and environment and stimuli to the body, there can be reversibility of some brain reflexes. So this is also a grey area. Then we have physical and metaphysical considerations, which essentially you can look at the two positions that Muslim scholars have held, and the proponents of brain death being legal death, which is the UK law position, they argue more on the basis of the physician, the expert, is in the best position to declare this. And it's a probabilistic, which means there's no strict endpoint. Because it's probabilistic, we need the experts to give their determination. And where it relates to organ donation would be the principle, the qaida, that living take precedence over the dead. There are living patients who we know for a fact could benefit from the organ, whereas this patient is deceased for all intents and purposes, and so the principle implied here is that the living take precedence over the death. Also, because it's probabilistic and there's no defined endpoint, they rely more on the favor of the expert, the opinion of the expert, as I mentioned. The other position would go with the other principle, which is certainty is not removed by doubt. We know that the heart is beating, we know that the person was alive. That certainty can't be overruled by any element of doubt that this patient has expired on account of their brain death. And the metaphysical and the spiritual considerations here, for example, the arguments have been made that in the Quran, for example, that the sleepers of the cave, which I mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf, Allah caused them to sleep for 300 years, and what type of state were they in during that time? This is more of a spiritual question. Certainty is not overruled by doubt. If we look at why this is important, we have implications for death. So we need to know, for distribution, for inheritance to be distributed, for the burial to take place speedily, for organ donation, which we'll discuss. Just an overview of organ donation before we move on. There are two types. You can consider living patients who donate their kidneys or their liver or the pancreas. These are well-known operations where a living patient can donate this organ and continue about their life, and the patient who is donated to will benefit from that. And on the other side, you've got deceased patients, and we'll talk about the circumstances of how those organs are donated. So essentially, a patient has died, and through their consent, we can take the organs, retrieve the organs, and find a donor and donate those organs and transplant those into the recipient. In what circumstances do deceased patients donate their organs? So this is a very rare occurrence. 1 in 100 deaths potentially could be suitable. And as I mentioned, it's your car accident, it's a patient having a stroke, patient having a heart attack, or a clot, whether it's in their lungs or... So these are rare situations. It means that the patient has been taken to the emergency department, and in that critical, unstable time frame, and with them being a donor, the transplant team can get organized and try to retrieve the organs that they can. And it's a time-critical situation because the organs will not survive long out of the body, and they have to be retrieved with due care, and it's a time-critical thing. Also, the match in terms of the patient's medical history and various considerations depending on the organ and depending on the recipient, it's a rare occasion that these can be transplanted. The Muslim scholars have generally, in principle, declared transplant and donation permissible. And it's a good, rewarded act of charity, of course, if done with the right intention. But there are caveats. So Sunni scholars anyway have declared that the prohibition of selling the organ in any way, there should be no financial gain or no other recompense for the organ. To note, in Iran there's a very well-established organ trade, a trade of kidneys. It's by law, it's a regulated market. People can basically be paid for donating a kidney, but Sunni Muslims and Sunni ulama have declared this prohibited. The organ has to be a necessity for the recipient, medical necessity. The donor must not be harmed considerably, and obviously this involves an expert opinion and it goes case by case. There should be a reasonable chance of success, and it should be with the consent of the donor, whether it was after death or during their lifetime. I don't think there's anywhere in the world which authorizes taking organs without consent, but there is illegal organ traffic and human trafficking and organ harvesting, and that kind of thing does happen. It's very important, the consent of the donor. Dignity of the deceased and the reproductive organs in Islam cannot be donated because of the principle preservation of lineage. Now, the controversy is all surrounding this area of donation with after brain determination of death versus after cardiac determination. So what we discussed at the beginning was a patient whose heart has stopped beating for a minimum of 5 minutes. This is cardiac determination. But if you take UK law, which considers brain death equivalent to cardiac death, then that patient is also dead, even if their heart continues to beat. And this is where there's a controversy around, can you retrieve organs from a patient whose heart is beating, albeit it's beating because of a ventilator, i.e. the patient themselves cannot support their breathing, but if the machine continues to operate, then the heart will continue to beat. And Muslim scholars have disagreed over this too, so our job is not really to go into the controversy. Obviously, I'm not an expert in either Sharia or organ transplantation, so we won't go too much into it. But to know the controversy is there. And just the process is tricky. There's a lot more to it. There's a lot more ethics, and even by UK law, with brain determination of death, the vessels of the heart, for example, have to be clamped so that no blood flows to the brain. And they have these considerations. It's very detailed. They have their guidelines. Yeah, so we're almost there now. Organ donation is an important subject for us to consider, not least because the law is changing in around April time this year. If you consider the UK population, 11% of it is black and ethnic minority, but of the waiting list, those waiting for an organ, we're way overrepresented in that 35%, and only 3% of black and ethnic minority are on the organ donation register. So as you can imagine, lots of patients die every year due to not being able to receive a donor organ, and lots of patients are waiting for that, and a lot of those, an overrepresented proportion of those, are from black and ethnic minority. We have to consider, how does this change in the law affect us? So there's a lot of misconceptions around, the government now owns your organs, the healthcare system, they can do anything they like with our organs. What does it actually mean that you have to explicitly opt out of the system to ensure that your organs won't be donated? Well, firstly, you can opt out, so the organs are yours. You can sign up, you can open the NHS website, you can say opt out, and that way your organs will not be donated in any circumstance. However, even if you don't do that, the family of the deceased can decline this if they're available there and they say, no, we don't want the organs donated, then their wishes are respected. And clearly, your organs will not be used for research or anything like that. They have to be for medical need. They will be transplanted into a patient who needs them. And the transplant team is independent of the medical team looking after the patient, so there's no conflict of interest. And importantly for Muslims, and as we mentioned the controversy earlier, Muslims have a choice for whether they would have their organs be donated after death using circulatory criteria or neurological criteria. So if you believe, as the Muslim, for example, Fifth Council of North America last year published their fatwa on deceased organ donation, and they said, we don't consider brain death as valid. There has to be a cardiac death of minimum of 5 minutes, and then the organs can be retrieved. If that's your position, then you can make that known to the UK organ donation register, and they'll respect those wishes. And the misconceptions, as we said, are many. Others, for example, Muslims may find that, it's indignified for the death of the body. It obstructs on the honor of the body to undergo an operation. Well, the hadith are there, but the scholars say that this is for a good, justified reason, and this is not infringing on the dignity of the body, rather it's for a good cause. And in that sense, it's justified to go ahead with this. And it's nothing like a post-mortem. The incisions made are very clinical and very professional and very minimal, and they don't disfigure the body. There's no real delay to the burial. It can be done quite promptly after the organs have been retrieved. And so lastly, just to mention that even though Muslims know, for example, the religious ruling that it's permissible, there are many other factors which prevent Muslims from actually signing up for the organ donation, or in this case, not opting out. Some of these include just misinformation, like I said, personal reasons, apathy to the situation. For example, you'd be influenced a lot more if you knew a patient who was on the recipient list, and if you interacted with patients who have undergone transplant and the effect on their lives. All of these things are important to consider. And that's why organizations like BIMA, for example, who hold these events, where they bring together different professionals, different patients who have undergone transplant, patients on the waiting list, things like that, is for awareness, because it's more than just, is this haram or halal? There's a lot more to it, and that awareness and the discussions that are necessary will be essential for improving the situation. Implied consent. So, this is also an area of disagreement, that if I don't explicitly, so it's time to finish. So, I would encourage you all to check the BIMA website, and also Initiative on Islam and Medicine. It's a very good YouTube channel and website discussing medical ethics, if you're interested in that field. Jazakallah khair, and hand over to Imam Abdullah.
I'd just like to thank Osama for taking out time from his very busy schedule and joining us here, and alhamdulillah giving us an insight, especially about the organ donation. A lot of us aren't aware about this opt-out policy that's taking place in April, and alhamdulillah is giving us a good insight into that, and also to check if the person is actually dead, because believe it or not, there have been mistakes that have been made. But, so alhamdulillah, with this checklist we will be able to check properly. Now, alhamdulillah, we've got some great personalities here today, so it doesn't befit me to stay on this stage for very long. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our new next guest. Maulana is actually from Dewsbury, believe it or not, and he went to study in madrasa in Nottingham for 5 years from the tender age of 16, after which he continued his studies again in Dewsbury for another 5 years, where he graduated as an alim and also the hafiz, mashallah. And after his graduation, he spent some time in the local Dewsbury community, and then he was sent, I suppose you could term it, a special mission to here in Newcastle, where he was sent as an Imam, where he's been doing Imamat at Medina Masjid for almost 15 years, mashallah. And amongst them 15 years, he's also not only been the Imam there, he's also led the janazah salah, he's also taken care of the community, he's also taken care of the nikahs that have taken place, he's also taken care of the children and the upbringing of the youth in the community as a teacher. And that brings me on to one of his latest endeavors, which is the Ar-Rahman Girls School that he is a joint proprietor for, which is opening up in Fenham this September, inshallah. It's just on the last stages of completion. It'll be a girls' school, if I'm not mistaken, the first in the Northeast Islamic girls' school. So, like I say, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Maulana to inspire us with his wise words, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Just before I begin, I'll just go over the PowerPoint that we have in front of us. As you can see, it's by Maulana Ibrahim Noor. He's from Coventry, and mashallah, he's made quite a few good PowerPoints in different subjects. This is one of the ones that I'm using at this moment of time. I've used one before to know the male hygiene in Islam, a topic which not many times or hardly parents converse with their children. And this is also another topic now here in regards to funerals. It's something that we tend not to sit down and discuss it thoroughly. We might go through praying the salah, and we'll discuss that, teach our children, etc. But when it comes to funerals, A to Z, going through the whole process of carrying out a funeral, what to do at the time when somebody is passing away, we hardly ever go through all of this. So alhamdulillah, we take this opportunity, I myself as well, as always, a student till we get to the grave. So I'll be learning new things here as well today with you. First and foremost, before passing away, I'm not going to go through this so much, preparing a will. I've got some booklets here, if somebody is very much interested in also that inheritance in Islam, preparing the will, how to prepare the will, and the importance of preparing a will. It saves a lot of hassle for especially the family after we have left, or after our parents have left. Because I have seen many, and we're conversing with a few at this moment of time, there's a lot of fights occur, and then they blame the father that why didn't he do it when he was alive? It would have been easier. So it's a very important and necessary to understand the wills, how it works, and to write it out before we leave, and to preferably get our parents to write it down before they leave as well. So these are some of the things we are going to go through: the ghusl, the shrouding of the body, the janazah prayer, and also then the process of the Islamic burial. Some of the things that Dr. Osama has gone over, we won't go over that, we'll just pass by that. So certain rulings that we have to then go through. First and foremost, death. كل نفس ذائقة الموت. Every soul has to taste death. We all know that we've come into the world for a very short time, and we will have to leave this world. This is why Prophet ﷺ mentioned, كن في الدنيا كأنك غريب أو كعابر سبيل. Live in the world as though you are a traveler or a wayfarer. Because this life, in one hadith it mentions that the life of my ummah is between 60 and 70. Is there anything over that is bonus? Some people go well before that as well. الكيس من دان نفسه وعمل لما بعد الموت. Intelligent person is he who controls his self-desires, perform deeds after his death. And the helpless one is the one who follows his self-desires and relies on Allah. Very pretty simple, straightforward meaning. A person, we all know we have to leave this world. Where we are going and for how long we are going somewhere else is forever and ever. So to prepare for that, as one person put it very simply, is if we are obedient to Allah in this world, we can do what we want in the hereafter. But if we do what we want in this world, we can't do what we want in the hereafter. So it's best to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this world. Why have we prepared this workshop? Anybody have any ideas? One, what I mentioned earlier. Any other ideas? Why do you think a workshop of this sort would take place? Or why should we think that I need to learn something about this? Anyone?
People have different ideas.
People have different ideas. Anything else? Okay. First and foremost, as Muslims, we follow the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, we come from different cultural backgrounds. A lot of the times, a lot of culture gets involved within our religion. There's no harm if it's a culture that does not contradict the Sharia. But there is harm if it's a culture that's contradicting the Sharia. So this is why one of the reasons to stop committing innovative acts that have no basis in Islam. That's one of the reasons. Provide proof on acts and customs which are regularly performed. Sometimes many things are performed and we don't know why they're being performed. This is why, besides the workshop, obviously I'm not going to go through the proofs of the workshop, we have a booklet through exactly the same thing as the workshop with all the proofs within that booklet as well. If anybody requires that as a PDF, they can leave their email address with Brother Hafiz Jamal and we'll forward that to you also, inshallah. To stop certain customs which can be expensive and wasteful. A lot of people spend a lot of money, especially in two acts. One in a happy occasion for no reason, and one in a sad occasion for no reason. Weddings and funerals. A lot of money gets spent, a lot of wastage, and it works out expensive. Explain the burial process according to Sharia as well as the legal process. So this is why we have this workshop here today, to go through these points, inshallah. First of all, what we will learn, what to do when we see somebody passing away. It's not usual, it's not an everyday thing. Yes, people pass away every day, but it's not always going to be your own family members every day. We might only come across in our lifetime maybe 3 times, 4 times, maybe only twice, maybe at my parents' time. And that's it, we're never close to somebody so much that we're in that same room at the time they're passing away. It happens. Some people, more often, they might have a bigger family, go to quite a few. So what do we do when somebody's passing away? Legal paperwork for burial, which we've been through a little bit, but we'll go through it. How to prepare the coffin, the shroud, with the body of the deceased. The correct process of burial, and the correct way of mourning, and the information of iddah. And then how to visit the house of somebody who passes away. So we'll go through these points, inshallah. I'm going to skip through the wills bit. As you can see, the importance of the will, that Prophet ﷺ mentions it's a duty of a Muslim who has something which is to be given as a bequest, not to have it for 2 nights without having his will written down. So if you owe money to somebody, or somebody's given you a trust, then you have to have it written down. Because you could pass away, family member comes, find a whole lot of money in your pocket, saying, wow, he left so much for us. And it's not yours, it's somebody else's. But like I said, I'm not going to go through the whole will bit, so we'll just try and skip a few of these pages, inshallah. These are just a few points in the books. There's 1 or 2 of these papers at the back of the book as well. Gives you an overview of how to prepare a will, the form for a will, providing everything, pensions, etc. So a lot of things goes into the wills, and it could affect us to the extent that we may, or our children may not get a lot either if we don't do it correctly, because of the tax, the laws of the country. Then, because there's no will prepared, they could take away a lot of your property and assets. Okay. When somebody is alive sometimes some people like to purchase their own graves. What's the ruling? Is it allowed or not allowed? There's no harm in purchasing your own grave, but you have to bear in mind, how do we know where we are going to pass away? We could prepare one here, or we could buy a plot here. You have to keep the deeds safe. You might go on a travel, Hajj, Umrah, or anywhere else on a holiday, and you pass away. So then all that legal process of going through all of that. So it's allowed, but it's not really, at this moment in time, it's not recommended as well. One other difficulties we come across when purchasing a grave, and this is what's happened here in Newcastle. So when we got the new plot here with the council, we made it, I think, with the council that we don't want anybody purchasing any graves. Simple reason was, when you purchase a grave and a particular plot, many people like to say, well, I want it with my partner or with my family member or next to them. So you bury somebody there, say the wife's passed away, so husband says, right, I want one next to him, her. Now he's booked that space, he's reserved it. But he doesn't pass away for the next 10 years. But that plot is reserved. Now everybody else passes away. The plots around are being filled up. He's only got a plot in the middle. Now to access that plot, you have to walk over the graves. The tractor has to come over the graves. And we'll come across that way. The hadith mentions not to walk over graves. All that takes place just so that somebody else can be buried in that spot. So it is pretty difficult. And the council people themselves also find it difficult, because you could have another family member next door, but the tractor's going over it, and you come and you think, whoa, what's this? Nobody likes it. So it's best not to purchase in that manner. So here, alhamdulillah, in Newcastle now, they don't reserve any. We just said, just don't reserve any at all. Even though a few people wanted to recently, we push for it not to be done, so that everybody can be just buried. And it's easier for the council, they said themselves as well. Secondly, how can a person who's embraced Islam and lives with non-Muslim family members, or is a Muslim who's in a relationship with a non-Muslim, ensure that the burial takes place according to Islamic rites? Very pretty simple. What they can do is, one, let somebody, the next of kin, know, I'm a Muslim, I want to be buried in Islam. They can pull out or draw up a legal thing with the solicitor, or they can leave it in the will behind that this is how I would like. If they're in a hospital or a home or a care home, then let the people there know that I would like to be buried as a Muslim. We've had many cases like that where we have to gone out, the family is non-Muslim, but they didn't know what they were doing, but the brother turned up and said he's a Muslim, how can we go about it? And they're very cooperative to go and do the job that needs to be done properly, and it's okay. So, have you written? Normally what I tell the new Muslim, many people accept Islam when they come, and they take the Shahada. What we try and tell them is, sometimes they don't want to tell the family, it's difficult for them. So what we tell them is, at least have a small, like an ID card made to say that I'm a Muslim. If anything happens to me, treat me as a Muslim, the rules and regulations as a Muslim, and just have somebody's address, name, or some organization's phone numbers, contact number there, so they can contact them if something does happen to you. Could be in an accident, you end up in hospital, at least they know how to deal with you because you're a Muslim. So all that can be taken into consideration. What are the physical signs of a person who is nearing death? Few classical signs: the quickening of the breath, the nose becomes bent, the temples subside, body becomes cold, body becomes weak. And this is somebody who's slowly passing away. Obviously sudden death is anything, accidents or that can be, but slowly somebody passing away. Recently, modern science, you can see that the skin starts crumbling out, mottled skin, there's increase in sleep, the bowels and all that will stop working. So probably 2-3 days, especially beforehand, once they stop working, then you know that they're nearing their death very, very closely now. Restlessness due to lack of oxygen, the fluid, and food decrease. Obviously somebody passing away won't want to think about the next food they can't. It's now the next life that they're thinking about. Sakarat of death, the stupor of death. When sakarat happens, it's a difficult time, it's the last part of a person passing away right towards the end. Why does it happen? And why should they go through this? It's a very difficult time. Towards the end of the life of the Prophet ﷺ, when he was going through, and he requested the angel to write, that is this what my ummah will go through? They said, yes, can you shorten it down? So he requested not for us as the ummah to go through so much difficulty. Even though at that time, when a person is going through that time, and it could last quite a long time as well at times. So his removal of sins are taking place at that point. Because he's going through pain, Allah is taking away the sins of his. He's raising the stages, and it's now the transition into the hereafter. So it's a difficult time. Person who's passing away, what is he known as? He's known as a muhtadar. Somebody, in the Arabic word muhtadar means present. It comes from the word hadara. And this is because death is now present, and the angel of death are also present. So he's in that state. Who should be around the person who's passing away? Normally, family members, and you will have friends there. You might have the neighbors there, and you might have the community there. It just depends on the situation of each person. If the family want to be left alone, we should look at that from our view. If it's somebody else's family, yes, he was our friend, leave them alone, do they want the space? You can ask them, if they have open door that yes, it's okay, they know somebody's passing away, people can come in, quickly go in, meet the person, very quickly, I will look and walk away. Because try and give the family most of the time. And this is what they want at this point. Any person who's in a state of ritual impurity should not be present there. They should have the ghusl and the ritual bath and then be present there. When a person is passing away, is it permissible for a woman in her menses to sit in the same room and make zikr of the remembrance of Allah? Yes, even though scholars have different examples, but they say there's no harm if the woman is there and making the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the time of a person passing away, how should we position the muhtadar, the one who is now passing away? There's two ways we can position them. One is this way, on the right hand side. So the right hand side is facing towards the Qibla. Okay? And the second one is where the feet will be facing the Qibla way. So these are the two positions. You can have them in at the time of at the end of their time. If that's possible, you may be in a situation where it's not possible, there's no harm, then it's not something that's so necessary where you have to. The thing is, if you can, there are certain places where you have to do certain things and let you know that, but where you can, that's one of the best, two of the best ways to put them facing the Qibla. What should we pray near the dying person? One is, we should be doing the talqeen, and secondly, praying the Yasin over the dying. Because it comes in the hadith that it relieves the pain from the person who's passing away. And to recite Yasin over your dead. And this is from experience as well. Reading Yasin eases the pain. They're the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran. So it will always have an effect. It's like if a person, me and you here, somebody says something to me, or if I say something to somebody, they'll get offended. Very quickly if we say nasty words to them. And these are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If the words of a human affects us so much, then why would the words of Allah not affect us? They definitely will. Talqeen. What is talqeen? Talqeen is to remind the person who's passing away of the kalima La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. So La ilaha illallah, to be read that. When a person is passing away, could be a week, could be 2 weeks before they're passing away, but they're in that state now where they're very close to their death. You'll only be doing talqeen, you won't be telling them to do their prayers. Because they're not in a state of doing their prayers anymore. So that's why, if you tell them, they might turn around and say, what? Why are you telling me something? And you'll think, whoa, Why is he saying that? But they're mentally not in that state now to do anything. This is why only talqeen takes place, of only reminding them of La ilaha illallah, that's it. But what you can do, you do is, you take note of the prayers that they miss. And then once they pass away, maybe it could be a week, 2 weeks, we give the amount from their wealth of what we call fidya, the amount that we pay for the missed prayers, which is not much, about £2 per prayer, and accordingly for the fast as well. So perform the talqeen for your dead with La ilaha illallah, and the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How do we perform the talqeen? You translate the kalima in a loud enough voice in front of the one who's passing away, so that they can hear you. Secondly, if they can hear you, that's fine. We do not instruct them that read it. Because many times a person may say to somebody, read it, and they'll say no. Because they're not in the right frame of mind, remember that. If they say no, somebody else in there will think, oh, he denied the kalima, I'm not going to read his janazah. And then you have a very tricky situation, and everybody's saying everything. So, best thing, you don't tell them to. If they've read it once, then don't ask them to read it again. Leave them, you just keep on reading. If they want to read it because they're only hearing you, they might just read it, or they'll just listen to you, it's enough for them. What to do when they pass away? Which some of the things Dr. Osama went through. Close the eyes, close the jaw gently, and keep it in place. You wrap a strip of cloth around the head firmly. And this all has to be done quickly. As I said, after 2-3 hours you won't be able to do anything. So all this has to be done beforehand. So even if they're in a hospital, they're in a home, if they're passing away, let them pass away. And once they've passed away, now straighten the whole body up, all the limbs, put the hands just to the side, which we will show when we have a practical demonstration passing through this. Close the eyes and also the jaw, and also wrap the feet up as well with a strip of cloth. And this all has to be done very, very quickly. Also, just one quick point, if it's a lady and she's got some nail polish on, either you take it off beforehand if they're ill, or if they're passed away, then straight away whilst the body is still warm. Otherwise it gets very difficult. We had this situation 3 years ago, I think it was, and then they passed away. The family didn't know. By the time the body came into the ghusl room, the room for bathing, my wife and some other women were there, and they were like, "You can't remove it, it's so difficult. Getting a remover, since to try and remove it." They did eventually remove it, but it was extra work, extra half hour, and then it's time consuming as well, and it's difficult. So, if there's ladies that you know and you're near your lady folks, do it beforehand or do it straight away. At least that bit, even before they go for their wash. Remove any jewelry or dentures, etc., anything like this. Tubes and catheters can also be removed. You can even ask for this. If the patient is in hospital, ask the nurse and that to remove it beforehand, before they send the body down to the mortuary. Any open wounds, you can bandage them up. Sometimes they keep on bleeding and everything, so bandage them up, it's not a problem. Importance of an early burial in Islam. From everything, from beginning till end, from the womb of the mother till we pass away, Islam has taught us everything, what to do. Now, living in certain countries, it might get difficult. But, alhamdulillah, here, especially in the UK, we are very, very lucky. Even though it's not an Islamic country, but they give us a lot of rights, and they give us a lot of easiness in our day-to-day lives as well. They give us a lot of opportunities. And alhamdulillah, if we take it in the right way, in the correct manner, then we can move forward. So here as well nowadays, if somebody even passes away on a weekend, they have an on-call registrar, on-call coroner, everything on calls, and they know that if it's a Muslim, as soon as they're told that it's a Muslim death, then they try and do it ASAP. And usually it gets done within the same day as well, just like a normal weekday. Alhamdulillah. So, in Islam, burying the deceased when somebody passes away, to bury them as quickly as possible. We have to do it. In normal circumstances, we do it as quickly as possible. If there's been an issue or there has to be a delay, let that pass by. Don't then try and rush them that no, it has to be done, so I want to do it quickly, but you know, it was an accident. They have to go through post-mortem, they need some more evidence, etc., so it's going to take long. It might take a couple of days. So let that pass by easily, and then do it as ASAP after that. The reason is, the hadiths, they're very clear. Hurry up with your dead body, hurry up to bury it, because if it's righteous, you're forwarding it to something good. And if it was otherwise, then you're putting it off. Then you're putting off an evil thing from your next. So whatever the situation, hurry up and get it done as quickly as possible. Previously, this was very common. Alhamdulillah, nowadays it's less, but it's still there. Burying the deceased abroad. Why do you think people would do that? Just a simple question. Somebody might have family here that's done it, or why do you think people want to be buried somewhere else? Say, let's take UK. We come here to earn our money, or our parents came here, so we want the money and everything, but now somebody passed away, they want to go back. Why? Because they were born there, raised there, fine. Any other reasons? Yes, many different reasons. One, they may want to be buried with their family members because they were born there. And some even to the fact that they think, okay, that part of earth is better than this part of the earth. Whereas the whole earth belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The earth is vast. It all belongs to Allah. It's nothing to do with where you're buried. Yes, in the hadith it comes being buried or passing away in Medina, the good cause. The main thing that matters is how we pass away. And how we pass away is how we've spent our life. So how we spend our life is how we pass away. How we pass away is how we are resurrected. That's the reality. So certain communities still go through this. They send their bodies back home. It's not recommended unless it's justifiable. First of all, it goes against the practice of burying them as quickly as possible. Secondly, it costs extra money. Extra money, extravagance, unnecessary cost, and difficulty. Somebody has to go with the body, then difficulty in the country you get to, the people there. So it's all a difficulty as well. Many companions, the Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajma'in, passed away in and around the regions of Mecca and Medina. Okay? But they were not brought back to Mecca or Medina. They were buried where they were passed away. So they were not far from Mecca or Medina. Today here we sit here and we wish, yes, I could be buried in Medina. We all wish, or we should wish. But the Sahabas, they were so close. Just like maybe going from Newcastle to Sunderland, oh that's fine, let's just bury them in Medina. But even then they won't. So which shows us those are the people that we follow, we should also follow them in this aspect. These are the difficulties we go through when we're sending the body abroad. The embalmment of the body. Okay? This is what it includes. It gets filled with chemical preservatives, alcohol solvents, and without the valid reasons, we shouldn't go through all of that. The body gets cut off, blood removed. Also then, the fact is that whoever is doing the embalming could be a male doing it to a female. So you're opening up the female in front of a male for no reason, and vice versa. So why go through all of that? It could be a time where a person has kept their own body covered in front of the opposite gender all their life, and now at the time when they've passed away we're opening it or exposing it to the opposite gender for no reason. Or maybe for pressure from the community. Sometimes it's pressure from the family and community. Send them back here, send them back here. So it's not something we should do, and it's a waste, extravagance, and a waste of money as well. Breaking the bones of the deceased is like breaking his bones when he's alive. So you're putting somebody through getting it cut up to put the solvents and all chemicals inside. That's like breaking bones. Basically, don't give pain to the body if it doesn't need any of it. Legal preparation, I think we've just sort of been through this, so we'll skip that. Keeping the family doctor informed, something that Dr. Osama also already went over 14 days prior to their passing away. If they're informed, then it's very easy to get hold of them afterwards, keeping the track. So these are all the certifications you will go through. Normally, if you get in touch with the funeral services or the ones who are in charge, it works different in each community. Here in Newcastle, the funeral directors go through all of this. Some areas there's a whole funeral committee that go through it, or the mosque has their own committee each. And they'll do all this A to Z and guide you through what paperwork and everything you need. Though you will, as a family, have to go into either the civic centre or the town hall and register the death. The funeral director can't do that. The family have to do that, or the family friend. He can't do that. He'll take you there, but you have to be present and you have to go there. So, when a death occurs, this is the legal work. If it's occurred at home, and so I'm just going to skip through this, which we've been through already. Contacting certain people who we've passing away, where home, hospital, care home, accordingly, inshallah. So I'll just try and skip through all of this. This is all present in the booklet as well, which if you require, and even this workshop slide, you require this. If you give your email, inshallah, to Brother Hafiz Jamal at the end, he'll forward it on to you. First of all, why do we have to bathe the deceased? The one living this world, going in the afterlife, Sharia commands that the body should be sent with honor and respect. No better way than to be sent, giving them a bath, clean clothing, clean sheets. Just like when we go to weddings, we have a shower, clean clothes, new clothes. Likewise, passing away, we do that, even though in passing away there's simple clothing, because it's just sheets of cloth. When somebody is passed away but the bathing has not took place yet, can the Quran be recited in their presence? There's a difference, but it's permitted as long as no visible impurities are present. Reciting the Quran in any other room or anywhere else is fine. This is talking about somebody in front of them, in that particular room that the deceased is in that room. A close family allowed to touch the body. Is there any sin in kissing the body of the deceased? There is no harm in touching the body of the deceased, and there is no harm in kissing the deceased either. Both are allowed. As Aisha radiallahu anha narrates, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam kissed Uthman ibn Ma'zun when he had passed away. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was crying and his eyes, tears were flowing. So you're allowed. What to do with the body before the ghusl? First of all, is a non-mahram, male or female, allowed to see the deceased? Non-mahram is somebody who is allowed to marry that person. As we know, the mahram and the non-mahram. So, just like he was living, the veil, the parda, the hijab is still observed in this manner as well, even after they pass away. in the same manner. So males should not see the body or the face or the body of a non-mahram female and vice versa. If there's no delay, then it's best to get the bathing done and get it to the place, either to the masjid or wherever the funeral is going to take place, or to the burial. If there's a delay, then move it to a mortuary. Different areas have different. If there's a delay in burial, and it's better to then do the bathing before the time of the burial. So you move the body away to a mortuary and leave it there. Try not to move the body so much around. So you don't want to do a bath, then move it somewhere else, then move it again, and then the burial is the next day. It's better to move it to one place, leave it there. Next morning, if the burial is next morning, move it, take it to the burial, move it, and straight away for the bathing and then to the burial place. It's best to be moved as less as possible. The shrouding, which we will go through practically as well. What can be worn when you're shrouding someone? What can you shroud them with? What type of cloth? It can be any cloth which was permitted to wear whilst you're alive. For men, silk is prohibited. Just like now, silk is prohibited for men, so they're not allowed. It shouldn't be made from an expensive material. And the cost of the shrouding or the funeral cost should be from the person who's passing away. So this is why it's recommended that before you pass away that you've put money aside to be used at the time of your death. If the person does not have enough, then the family can contribute. And at times we get a situation where there's no family, nobody around, then we just tell, or we just make an announcement. And alhamdulillah, Muslims are good at giving, especially in these situations, and end up getting some money to pay for the person, for the burial. The cloths and that shouldn't be so long, and definitely not short either. Just be enough to cover the person. You can prepare your own shroud before you pass away, so you can have it bought and have it prepared before you go then. Use this cloth. These are the different pieces of cloth that are being used. For males and for females, there's only two different. The females have 2 extra pieces of cloth. And the males have 3 pieces. And that's just covering extra for the females. Otherwise, just 3 pieces for the males and the 5 pieces. And then you have the strips of cloth. Okay, shall we go through this, the practical now, or do you want to do the practical at the end? What would be ideal? Practical now or practical at the end? Now. Now? Okay. What I've done is, I've even bought the scissors to cut one part, which have to be cut, otherwise the rest of the pieces are pretty straightforward. But you need 3 strips. One of you stay here. We'll go through it at the same time. I think it might just be. So we have one brother here preparing for death very quickly. Okay. This is best to be put at the bottom, because these are the strips that will be used to tie the entire shroud at the end. Just show you also. This is one of the extra pieces for the females to cover their hair. So this is known as the scarf, as you can see. You fold it into a triangle and this is put over the head towards the end. This is also the extra piece which will go, it's like a frock for the ladies. It's a simple small rectangle. This is the kameez, the tunic, and that's the one that needs to be cut. This bit here is what we will use as the tunic, the kameez. Now when making the kameez, get a piece of cloth which is about from the shoulder to just go down past the knees. So about this much length. So you leave some of it at the back, so you have a double fold. It doesn't have to be all the way the same length, both sides, just some at the back and some at the front. Now the way to cut this, just hold one side, because this is what's going to go over onto the body. So it's like a shirt. Best way to cut it is split it into half. Just make a small split. Open it up. If you make a small split first, then you open it up, and then you make a bigger split towards the front of it. Not the back, but the front of it. Big enough for the head of the person to go through. So a bit on the sides. Just enough for it to wrap over the head. Now this is where we use our volunteer. Normally people are very scared, not only volunteering to do this, to even go into the room where the bathing takes place. In some mosques they have a particular room where they bath the deceased, and people are so scared they don't even go into that room. And what I tell them is, then why do you go to the hospital? Everybody dies there. They don't understand what. So, okay. What you would normally do, this would be usually in a casket, or it can be on a bed. What we've just cut, the head, the cut is here at the front. You fold up the top bit of it. So the bottom bit is there. You fold up the top, right to the top. The reason for this is now, when we're not going to lift him up. But once we put the seat here, lie down. So, how will we transport him from the table up to here? And even when we start, which will come further when we're doing the bathing, go and lie down there. Normally, when you're going to start, I'll just go through the whole procedure of the bathing and everything here, and then once we go through the slides, you'll understand. You've already seen before. Whenever we bring somebody to bath them, somebody who's passed away, we put them on the table, they'll have their clothes on. If they come from a hospital, they'll have the hospital clothing on, or they'll have their own clothes on, whatever. This is him having his clothes on. You get thick towels. I'm just using a white sheet because that's all I've got here. But normally you'd use dark coloured thick towels, a big bath towel. And what you would do with that is, you would put it at least over the satar, which is known as the private parts of a man. That's from the stomach, from the belly button to the knees, and for the women also. You would cover their body parts that they would normally cover and not exposed to people, even of their own gender, in their lifetime. So same for the men and the women. You would cover this with dark towels. After this, you won't try to take the clothes off. You just get scissors and you just cut through, because nobody's going to wear them again. So you're just going to cut through it all. You get scissors. I won't cut through yours. You cut through everything and you take it. You always try and keep the towel there so it's not exposed. As soon as you've took everything off, Now this is complete, ready for the bathing. First thing you do is, you sort of gently press through down onto the stomach, so if there's any waste or anything that needs to come out, will come out. Okay? And then, normally, how when you would go to the bathroom and clean yourselves, you clean this person up as well, do the istinja, what we call. So cleaning, after, if there's any impurities or anything, that gets cleaned. And you can do that also by raising them onto one side, tilting them onto one side, and cleaning the back using gloves, cotton wool and water. You tend not to touch the private parts, you use cotton wool and all that and clean it with that. You throw the water from the top, or somebody can just slightly raise this without looking at it and throw the water from the back. So you'll have somebody here either throwing the water and one person cleaning there using the left hand, usually a close family member does, and using the left hand to the istinja. Once that's done and complete, now you start the bathing itself. Now the bathing is, the first thing you do is the wuzu. How we would normally do wuzu. That's what you do. Though in normal wuzu we start with just the hand to the wrist. You can do that if you want. Otherwise, you just do the face first and then the whole arm. The right arm, the left arm, and do the masa of the head, and then wash the feet. That's the wuzu done. Now what we will be doing is the actual bath, just normal how we have a bath. But just bear in mind, if the jaw's already closed, that's fine. Get a cotton wool, wet cotton wool, just open up, clean a little. If the jaw is still wide open, still the same thing, get cotton wool. And before you start putting water over, put wet cotton wool over the nose and over the mouth so water is not just seeping in. And likewise, use cotton wool for inside of the ears to wash, and then just cover it whilst you throw water over. Warm water shouldn't be boiling, it shouldn't be cold either, because this is will feel. That's why we said, if you break bones, just like they are alive, it has them. Likewise, don't do it. Use the water what we would normally use in a shower, normal warm water. Start from the right hand side, wash down the right hand side, and then wash down the left. You can also use some shampoo, sponges, not down on the hair or the head. You can also use it along the body, wash it 3 times. Try and wash the body from the right and the left, tilting this side to do the back on the right hand side, and then tilting it to the right to the back of the left hand side. Once that's all done and you've washed the body about 3 times, if there's anything, jewelry, dentures, anything like this, take all that off. Once the body is complete, you prepare another bucket with some camphor. Camphor is like a smell that's used to put over the body right at the end. So use some of that in some water, a bucket of water, which you'll throw over the body. Once you get to that stage, there's one also thing that if you think there's still some impurity within the body, you can raise the body up, just sit up a bit, raise the body up that much and just press on the stomach and then raise it down. Usually nothing comes out. If something does, you just clean that part. You don't have to go through the whole bathing again. The last bucket of water is the camphor water, which you put over the entire body. Men will do men, women will do women. If there's minor, if there's no men or somebody like that, then the women will do it, if it's a child. And likewise, but if they're around, then the men will always do it. And obviously extreme cases where there's nobody about, then that's, you have to go through what's there, you'll do it. But otherwise, in normal circumstances, the men will bathe the men and the women will bathe the women. Once all the ghusl is done, get a towel, get a couple of more towels as well. You start drying the body, you swap this towel over. So when you swap it over, you put the other towel in first, and you pull this towel out like this so that nothing ever gets exposed. And you put the other towel up over the body. Now, usually you'll remove the body from here onto another table where all this has been set. So let's just imagine we've lifted him up from the ghusl table with the towels, everything on top. Best way to move them, get a couple of long bath towels, put them under the armpit, put one under the armpit, put one somewhere around here, and then two people can lift that, and the other one can hold the head, one can hold the feet and the arms, and you remove the body. Sometimes it just depends how many people have to be there, depends on the size of the person. Sometimes they can be very heavy, so you need a lot more people. Especially in women, if there's heavy women, a lot of women don't tend to come for the ghusl thing. You should take the opportunity and think to yourself, let me go, it might remind me of my own death. At least then I can prepare myself properly in this life for the hereafter. And we should go to assist. Sometimes the assistance mostly is only needed of lifting the body. Otherwise the bathing and all that, one person or two people can do it. But the main thing is when we're lifting. That's the difficult part. Sometimes you get family, or you get certain people passed away, there's no family, nothing. And then we've only got 2-3 women there, and it's very hard for them. And they say that, look, we need more women. So whenever the call comes up, you should take the opportunity and go. Right, when we put them onto the body, when we put the body onto the bed here, this is where we then cover them up with the first part, which is the tunic, the khamis. And this is why I said, when we leave it at the end there, either it's folded up, whatever, we bring it over, like this, and this is the khamis that we've put on. Once this goes on, because the body is dry as well, you can remove the towel from underneath, making sure nothing is moved. And that's the first part, the kurta. Then this is all for men and for women in the same manner. So that's the first piece that will go on. This was supposed to be the second part. This is the extra part of the ladies. This is the men's. First part gone on. I'll just finish off with the men's before we... This is the second cloth for the men, which is just under this. Always left first. Always the left side goes up first, and then the right hand side will cover. Just to make sure, normally the funeral directors, all that, will have took measurements, etc., for the right clothing to go over. Then you have the last cloth, which is the last one. And likewise, same again. Just 1 minute, and I keep here. The last cloth, right and left. These are the 3 pieces of the men done. And this is where you have the strips of cloth which I mentioned earlier, the 3 pieces. One gets tied here, tight, and then one in the middle and one at the feet. The only difference for the women is the 2 pieces. One that will be put just underneath the kameez that he wore, the tunic that he wore, just underneath that, which will cover more of the chest part over. So that's the same part, and cover that, and then you do the same again, except for the head, where over the hair of the lady also, before you put the last 2 pieces over, you just put that over. Just think you're a woman, yeah? So you just put it over the hair, the end here. And then you do the same again, bringing the left of the last 2 pieces over. And those are the 5 pieces, and then same again, tying the knots. Okay? So that's the bathing and the shrouding of. Now, I know even though you've seen it, until you don't do it once or twice, you don't get the hang of it. Okay, that's why I'm very glad I did come all the way to Newcastle, because when I came here, then all eyes are on you. So I was young, still am, but sorry. And the thing was, when you come to places like this, and there's not many scholars around, especially English speaking, then they put you in the limelight. So you have to then do it, and you think, and you will make mistakes. Believe me, you make mistakes. Because there are some people, you get old people in the community who've been doing it for years. They've seen somebody else do it, now they're just carrying on. Sometimes they might make slight mistakes, and you'll think, that's not in the book. That's not from, why is he doing that? And they'll do certain things. But Until you do it 2-3 times, then you get the hang of it, but not straight away. So don't worry about making a mistake. Always keep your notes in front of you. If you have a notebook or something that I made, this is what I did. Notebooks in front of me, I looked at it. I wasn't afraid to look at the notebooks. You will get people saying, oh, why is he looking at the book? Doesn't he know what he's doing? It's one of those things you have to learn. Practically is a different matter, and just to read something is very different. These are just going through the shrouds and the 3 strips of cloth that we put underneath. Then the lifafa, which is the large piece. Then you've got the izar, and then you've got the 3rd piece. This is the extra piece of the ladies for the female sinab and the covering of the chest part. And then you've got the kameez and the scarf. Okay. Items needed is simple. Towels you will need, rubber gloves, surgical disposable gloves, cotton wool shampoo, soap, buckets. Like I said, the nail remover, try and do that ASAP. Even if it's not the bath, even if it's just on the bed, just do it there. As the body is warm, there's no problem with that. We've been through this where who should wash who. So somebody in the menses want to do the washing. They shouldn't. If they can avoid, it's fine. But if they want to and somebody comes around and says, no, it's my family, I want to, then don't stop anyone either. It's okay. Let them go ahead with it. If there's nobody around, for a man or for females to give ghusl, then consult the local alim. Then they will see who is allowed to carry that out, how it can be done in the best manner possible. We have to take great care in handling the body when we're moving, transportation, everything. We've been through the ghusl, the whole bathing, so I won't read through all of that now. Position of the body at the time of bathing as well, same as when they were passing away. Okay? This is the whole process of how to go through the bathing, which we just went through now. Removing, simple. Performing wuzu first. Yes, for ladies, the plates should be undone and parted. So both the hair on both sides parted from the middle. Wet the whole body. Try and get water onto every part of the body, every hair from head to toe. Fill a bucket of water, add some camphor, pour this water over the whole body right at the end. Dry the body with towels. You can apply camphor and perfume on the body, especially on the parts that you were touching the ground when you go into sujood. So you can put some perfume upon that part. And then the shrouding that took place. Right. Sometimes people think, because I've given ghusl, because I've given a bath, do I have to now go have a shower? You don't really need to. It's desirable. You know better yourself. Did water splash onto me? Do I think that yes, I should go and have a shower, feel better? It's entirely up to you. You don't have to. But here are the advantages of going and having a shower. Just in case specks of water and that had impurity with it of the person who's passed away from the disease could have gone onto you, then at least you can have a change of clothes and clean yourself. And also, somebody can become frightened, so by taking a bath, it helps them relax a bit, come back into the normal state. So that's right. Ensuring the body stays covered. This is what we just went through here, practically moving on to the shroud. So lay all the pieces of cloth down first. Usually here they put it into the casket. The casket's there next to the table from where we washed the person, and they put it straight into the casket and do the same procedure what we went through. It's then much easier and quicker. Okay. Once you put the bottom up, you remove the towels. This is the last bit, and after that you tie the strips of cloth. And this is how it should end up looking like. When we visit the deceased, many people come and visit 3 days of mourning. Don't laugh, don't joke, don't talk about worldly affairs, etc. in the presence of the deceased. Okay? Sometimes the burial is tomorrow, so the deceased body is there. When you go into the house, don't laugh and all that sitting there. Who is allowed to see the body of the deceased? Those people who the Sharia can view the body of the deceased, who the Sharia has allowed. If the family do not wish for the face to be uncovered, respect their wishes. Don't demand it. Many a times, many people want to see the face, whereas in lifetime, they had an argument with them, they didn't want to see the face. Why do they want to see them now? I have no idea. But it happens. So don't force somebody to do something. How should the body be carried? Whoever follows the janazah carries it 3 times. Indeed, he has fulfilled its rights over him. There's no specific way how we should carry it, as long as it's carried carefully and swiftly. Quickly it's done, and we swiftly with the janazah. If it's a good person, you're sending them towards good. Otherwise, put down, bag from your shoulders quickly. Whilst we're waiting for the burial, in the graveyard when you go, sometimes it happens here and they're trying to work on it. You've buried somebody, you've put some soil in, some of the mud in, and now you've run out, so they've gone on to get some more. So it takes time. So what should you do? Recite some Quran, make dua, pray for the family, pray for the person who's passed away, pray for all the other people that are there in the graveyard who've passed away. Also, if there's any payments that are needed to be made, make sure you're ready for all of that. Take some rest. All of this before burial. Don't just tire yourself out, so at the time of burial you can't do much. You have to take your rest. You have to do everything else. Janazah prayer. It's the rights of a Muslim. It's Fardul Kifaya. Among the Muslim community, somebody has to do the janazah prayer. If a few people do it, then we're all relieved of it in our community. So, we should. And these are the rights of a Muslim upon us. And one of them is to follow the funeral processions, meaning also doing the funeral prayer. When you read it, plenty of reward for doing the funeral prayer and going all the way up to the graveyard also. Who should be the Imam? Many times, many people think, I know so-and-so scholar or so-and-so great scholars coming, I'll get him to lead the prayer. No, the rights is of the Imam of that mosque or that locality. It's his first right. So you shouldn't even ask him that can so-and-so. Normally, if he's a scholar, he'll know that when somebody, a great scholar comes along, he'll push them forward anyway. Usually is the case. But we shouldn't go forward and say, so-and-so wants it done, or so-and-so scholars here, let him do it. No. And then the father and the son. If the father and the son are more knowledgeable, and there's no local imam, or more knowledgeable, then they will have first priority. But otherwise, the imam, local imam of that masjid, will have the first priority to lead it. Can we read Salatul Janazah with our shoes on? This is because many places people do the janazah in the graveyard itself. So they'll go to the graveyard or in an open space outside somewhere. Those are the best places to do the prayers. Can we keep our shoes on? If there's no impurity underneath on that ground, then you can. Some people take them off and just stand on their shoes as well. So that is allowed as well. as long as you know that the shoes are pure and the ground you're standing on is pure. There's no impurity there on that particular spot where you're standing. Janazah prayer. There's 4 takbeers in a janazah prayer, and just a couple of imams will read after the first takbir, the thana, and a couple of the imams have said is Surah Al-Fatiha. So whichever imam you're following, that's fine, whichever one you read. All the rest are the similar, reading the durood, and then reading the du'as after the third takbir. Dua for a child, and the dua for the adult. All adults, male, female, same dua for the child also. And then after the 4th takbir, there's a salam. So the 4 takbir are the 4 important things. We should try and learn all of that that's involved in there, including the du'as of the deceased. Taking it to the cemetery, you can use any transportation. Usually the funeral director will have their van also. Where I come from, we just used to use any local vans. Now somebody's donated 2-3 vans there, so everybody just uses those vans. You don't even hire it out. Just take the van, you just put as long as you're over 25 to drive it, just put some diesel in, and you just use the van. That's sadaqah, ongoing sadaqah from the person who donated them. It's called Fi Sabilillah Funeral Services. You just take the van, everything's built in, and then you return the van after it's all done. Don't spend excessive amounts in hiring hearses and all that. It's not for us. Better than that is to give it in charity for the person who's passed away on their behalf. You get more reward. Likewise, you'll come further on, buying flowers and all that. You don't need to. It doesn't benefit the person who's passed away at all. Things that you need, usually it's all prepared there. Spades and all this are already in the graveyards. It's provided by the council there. When you're moving the body, you shouldn't be saying the shahada or the kalima loudly. Many people do, but then it's that point you don't want to tell them there and then. But this is a space where you tell them, or we tell all of us here. There's no basis of reading the kalima or the shahada loudly when we're picking up the body. Read it quietly to your own self. Okay? And walking behind the janazah is better, but you can walk on the sides also. When we lay the body into the grave, there's 2 ways. One is the entire casket goes in, and one is only the shrouded body goes in. When we do put it in, we try and face them towards the Qibla on the right hand side, facing the Qibla. So, other places people get into the grave, here they won't allow us, so we put the whole casket in. In Tyneside, Whitley Bay, they allow us, so people go in and they put the entire body in, and so just the shroud itself, and then face it. Here, you open the casket up before we put it in, face the body onto the right hand side, and put some mud pieces behind the back, so it's facing and it stays there, facing the Qibla. Once we're slowly taking the body in, once we're putting the casket or the body into the graveyard, we say Bismillahi wa ala millati Rasulillah. Okay. This is just how the body would be laid into the Qibla. I just mentioned that we put pieces of soil behind the body so it stays. Because you have to remember, some people think it's enough to just to face the Qibla. It's not, because once the body is cold, you move the head, after a while it'll come back. So you can't do that. You have to turn the whole body itself onto its right hand side. Then once we're filling in the grave, if a female has passed away and you're using the traditional where you put in the planks in first, then you start from the head side. For the male, you start from the feet side, putting in the plank. If you put the whole casket in, there's not a problem. When you put in the soil in as well, these are the planks that go in some areas in the country. This is how they do it. Here they just put the whole casket in and then one whole board in on top. Once you put it in, and then you're putting in the mud pieces, then you put in first one and you say minha khalaqnakum, and then you say wa fiha nu'idukum, and you say wa minha nukhrijukum taratan ukhra for the third one. this has died out. Okay, bury them. Okay. During burial, from the earth we created you, we shall return to it, you to it, and from it we shall raise you again. So what's read whilst we're putting in 3 pieces of mud in first. After that we use the shovels and fill up. When we fill up the grave, we should shape it like a camel's hump. It shouldn't be too high and it shouldn't be flat. Slightly bit, just about a span upwards from the middle hump, and that's it. So it's like a hump shape, not so high either. You sprinkle water over the graveside or on top of the grave after you've done the hump. This is because the Prophet ﷺ did it when his son Ibrahim passed away. It's permissible to go and get a branch and put it. Don't make it a habit, because the Prophet ﷺ only did it once. He didn't do it many times. So this is why our scholars say, okay, sometimes, but not always. You read the first ruku of Surah Al-Baqarah at the head, because this is what the companions used to read, and the last 3 ayahs from Aman al-Rasulu at the feet. Even this also, don't make, if somebody doesn't read it, you're in a place where the Imam, they buried them, they didn't read it, they just made dua and walked away, that's fine, don't make a fuss out of it. And if there's Imam there that reads it, let him read it, that's fine. You make dua facing the Qibla, because the Prophet ﷺ asked the companions that this person has been buried now, ask for steadfastness for that person. And it doesn't have to be where everybody does it together. You just face the Qibla, do your own dua. If a person does it loudly, just so that other people, they don't know what to ask or how to ask, that's why he's doing it loudly, people can join in with him. But otherwise, it should be done alone, just do the dua. General things what you normally do, preparing food. People tend to think that everybody has to be fed. It's not the case. People travel from far away, other families or around, neighbors and that, can prepare a bit of food to feed the travelers who've come. Not the people who are living nearby. It shouldn't really be prepared for them, and that, right, they're all coming here, so they have to be fed. And so we shouldn't demand it either, and we shouldn't put that pressure upon the families to go through that. In some communities, they put the pressure on and they have to make sure that they feed everybody. They've already got problems, or they're already in grief, and it's just extra grief. So don't burden the family. Try and talk to the families of doing the correct. One of the reasons you're here today, stop all these innovations. Try and get out to the other family members, talk to them how it should be done. And this will, at the time then, be very helpful for us, inshallah. This is the thing about not making our graves, not putting on big tombstones and all of this on the graves. One small stone enough with the name, or just a stone to show somebody that there's a grave there, not to flatten it, is more than enough. Otherwise, we shouldn't have big gravestones. Go for the smallest one, which is about 18 centimeters, then nobody do one. When we go into the graveyard, face the graves, supplicate for yourself, supplicate for the person who's passed away. This is the dua that you read when you enter in the Muslim graveyard. And so read Surah Yasin, and there's other du'as, Surah Al-Ikhlas you can read, Surah Al-Takathur you can read. When you go to somebody to visit them in the household, because their family member has passed away, try not say things that will hurt them, say good things and remind them. And sometimes to divert their attention away, taziyah is to give them comfort, divert their attention away from death, talk about something else which they can ponder over and think, oh yeah, and they'll talk about something so they forget, so that they don't get grieved so much and have a breakdown. Make the visits short. Some communities, when you go in, every time you go into the household, they expect you to make dua every time a new guest walks in. That's not from the Sharia either, and that's not necessary either. Whoever comes in, let them read whatever they want. Some communities put in loads of Quran and that when you come in you must pick one up and read it. No, don't put anything there either. Some people might not know how to read. Why do you want to shame them up? Some people might come, they might not have wuzu. They don't want to tell you I ain't got wuzu, or they might be shamed up. So don't put anything anywhere. They come in, let them say what they want, and then say kalima and walk away. Period of mourning is 3 days and 3 nights from the time of the person who passes away. only one person is allowed more than that, and that's the wife. The mourning for a woman, the person who's passed away, is 4 months and 10 days. Okay, and this is just so the family can get back to normality. So, preparing for death, do everything as the Sunnah way, inshallah. I think we've covered most of the parts of the actual bits of the practicals of doing the ghusl and the shrouding. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding. Hope this is helpful and beneficial for you, and also inshallah beneficial for me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the understanding and to follow it in the correct manner, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair. Just like to thank Mullah for taking time out and coming here and giving this talk. It's been very beneficial, especially the practical demonstration. It's very rare that we get this opportunity to witness this, and inshallah, I hope that it's been beneficial for everybody. Inshallah, it's sort of concluded now. Those who wish to leave can leave. Those who have got any questions, if they've been submitted by the Google Forms, the link was up at the beginning, that's fine. If you've got paper questions, you could send them to the end of the rows, and if the Google Forms could just pick them up and bring them to the vote in front. And I'd also like to invite our President to the front, and who can, inshallah, deliver the questions to the Dr. Amon Nasab. President, please. And also, there's these leaflets here about inheritance and about taziyah. If you'd like to take them, you can do. So if you could just send the questions at the end of the rows, inshallah. And also, inshallah, we'll be praying Salatul Isha in congregation after the questions and answers, which will be about 20 minutes or so. So if you'd like to make your way to the masjid, you can do, inshallah. Just for the question and answers now, inshallah.
When on Hajj or Umrah and you are reading a janazah prayer, if you are unsure if it is an adult or child, which dua do you read? When you're normally in Hajj or Umrah, they say a tifl if it's a child. If it's just an adult, they just say that Salatul Mayyiti. So they will normally say a tifl means child. If you're not sure, just read the dua that you read for the adult, which means just for forgiveness. It's fine as well. Secondly, should we do a khatam of Quran after the burial? Whatever you want to send or whatever you want to read extra, by all means, it's up to you. And you should do this, say for example, your parents pass away. Whatever you want to read, you can read every day. You shouldn't make it a system where you then call people to do it and you are making a habit of it that every person passes away, then every time we're going to get together and we have to read this. No. There's no such thing as getting people together. The Sahaba, the companions never did that either. Okay? They never said to everybody, right, so-and-so's passed away, everybody come into the masjid, we're going to do a khatam of the Quran. They never did that. Yes, if you by means yourself want to read and say that, Ya Allah, whatever I'm reading, send that to my parents who passed away. It comes in a hadith that the best thing that a person can leave behind is a good child. Good child means they do good things. So when you've left, the good they're still doing, because of you that they're doing that good, you'll get reward for it. One of the scholars used to say that every night before you sleep, you say, Ya Allah, all the nafils, all the extras that I have done, not the compulsory acts, those are for you and Allah only. Extra acts that I've done, send the reward of that. No reward will decrease from your reward, and send the reward of that to my parents. So you can read for them, anything extra, read the Quran and say, Ya Allah, send the reward of this to them. But don't make it as though you have to tell people, come and make a congregation of it. What does it mean by face the graves and greet them? What do we say? The dua that was in there, when you come into the graveyard and now you're in front of the graves, you say, Assalamu alaikum ya ahl al-kubur, antum sabiquna minna wa inna inshallah bikum lahiqun. That you have surpassed us and soon inshallah we'll be meeting with you. This is what we say. And then you just read Surah Al-Ikhlas for them as well. Some of the scholars in the past, every time they used to go past a Muslim graveyard, used to read Surah Al-Ikhlas 3 times for everybody buried there. visible impurities. What are some examples? Blood, alcohol. Impurities could be blood, alcohol, vomit, urine. These are visible impurities. Not if somebody is cut or something. Yes, if they're bleeding, then that's visible impurity. So if you have to stand in a place where you have to read, these visible impurities, if anything there, or you can see patches of it that somebody's just urinated here and walked away, but you can see the patch that is still any ground, then you can't read there on that piece of ground. You can move a little bit further away. Normal, like in our salah, you're traveling somewhere, you don't need a prayer mat, you don't have to go inside somewhere to just do. You could go stop at a cafe, go on to the side, there's grass there or there's ground there, as long as there's no visible impurity. Dirtiness is different. Being dirty is different to being impure. Impurity, there's no alcohol there, no blood, no urine, no feces. It's clean, you can do your prayer there. You don't need a prayer mat. There's no excuse for them missing the prayers. With regards to the recitation of the Quran to the deceased, not being performed if visible impurities, within the room where the person who's passed away, visible impurities, they might have a nappy on, there's urine there, they're not in the right state, you can see that there's a lot of blood, etc. there, then in that particular room not to read the Quran is better than to read the Quran in another room. For karamat, miracles, do they happen for people in this day and age, or are they limited to the time of the Sahaba and Tabi'in? No. Karamat is haq. Miracles is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who He wants to show miracles to and how. That's up to Allah, and miracles can happen till the end of time. Miracles can happen with anybody as well. Not necessarily just Muslims. It can happen for any. But if Allah wants to show a miracle to someone, then He will. But that does not mean miracles is not proof of being on the right path, or it's not proof of, you don't have to have miracles to then to say that, oh, this person is a good person. A good person is the one who's following the Quran and the Sunnah. If he's following that, he's a good person. This is why there was one person who was in the service of a sheikh, and after a while he said, oh, I'm leaving. He said, why? He said, because I've seen no miracles from you. He said, that's fine. But he said, did you see me go contradicting the Sunnah? He said, no. He said, then that's fine. That's the purpose of it. So yes, miracles can happen. If a person dies in debt, should the debt be paid off first? Should the cost of the dead person's funeral be paid off first from their own wealth before paying off any outstanding debt? First and foremost, the funeral will be taken care of. Because if you don't pay for the funeral, then there's more debt. So first and foremost, whatever money he's got should be for his funeral. Then whatever assets is left behind, secondly, is to pay the debts off first before you even go into inheritance. So that's the system. Then thirdly is where you will go into his wills and inheritance. So whatever his will, 1/3 of whatever's left will first go to whatever he's willed. Only 1/3, no more. Because at the time of death, everybody wants to give everything away for everybody, for his own self. But that's too late now. We can't accept it. We've had cases, we go to the people when they were fit and healthy, donate something towards this good charity, and we can't give it. The best charity is when it's given when you're fit and healthy. Okay? And when you think you need it most. At the time of death then, they say, oh please, Imam, please take all of this. Mufti Sahib, please, I want to give, I've got 7 houses, I want to give one in your, or I want to give all of them for your madrasa, for this charity that you're doing. We say, look, it's not yours anymore. So not a single house will be taken. Only 1/3 will be taken if after all the debt, everything, and there's something left. Then the rest will be given to the inheritors. Can a man do the ghusl for his dead wife, or a wife do the ghusl for her dead husband? Shall I get help with the ghusl? Like we said earlier, no, it will be women for women and men for men. So the man won't do the ghusl for his wife, and likewise the wife will not do the ghusl for the husband. If there's nobody else about, it's a different matter. But if there's other women about, they will do it. Can a man washing his wife's body? So a man won't be washing his wife, but if there's women about, they will do it. You also have to understand, and this is a little bit deeper, when a woman, a lady wife passes away, she's separated from the husband now in this world. She's gone. So he won't be allowed to go there now and touch her and do all of these things. Vice versa, when a man passes away, because she is still in the iddah, she has to spend 4 months, 10 days. So she's still the wife of the husband, because she can't marry anybody else yet. Only after 4 months, 10 days, or if she's pregnant, after the birth of the child. Whichever two comes first. This is for the doctors, and I think, could you please clarify more about the opt-out system? Do we have to opt out? Opt-out system being, is it law yet or not? That's
So the law comes in April this year. So if anyone wants to opt out right now, I'm not saying you should. You should consider it and talk to your local Imam or do whatever you're comfortable with. But you can log on onto the website, NHS organ donations, and you can fill out the questions on there and give your preferences and tell them you're a Muslim and any other preferences, whichever organs you wish to donate or not. And that form's live now, so you can go ahead and do that. It will stay live, so you can change your mind at any point. You can do the form at any point, and obviously communicate your wishes to your family too, because they'll have a say after your death as well.
okay. What's right and wrong according to Sharia regarding a gravestone? Gravestone is only there just to show that somebody's been buried here. In some countries, if you go to Makkah, Medina, there's no names, nothing. It's just a small stone, right? And obviously, because there a lot of people visit, a lot of people pass away, so different situations, they can't go around putting everybody's name on, they have no space left. In other places, countries here, people go and put a note. Best thing to do is just put a small gravestone with just a name on for recognition, and that's it. Don't put any Quran ayats on it. A lot of people tend to put Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and some Quran ayats. There's no need of it, and actually it's harmful to do that, because once you put that in Arabic, the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim on Allah's name and that, you get dogs coming into the graveyard, you get people coming in, they urinate over it, they do so many other things. So best thing, don't put anything, just the name, and if you want the date when they passed away or something, that's it. There's nothing else that needs to be done. And all the way around the grave and that, no other stones or nothing else should be put. Just a small hump of soil that's there, and that's it. Was it a ruling in holding a khatam on behalf of the deceased 3 days after the death, or 40 days, so on? 3 days is the mourning days. There's nothing, no mourning after that. Otherwise, when will you stop? If you have it after 3 days, you have the 40th day, it's about 20 members of your family has passed away, what are you going to do? So the Prophet ﷺ taught us a simple and easy way. He never taught this, he never did this, the companions never did it, the 4 Imams never did it. So it's not something that can just be implemented and done.